你有没有想过，为什么有些女人会选择外遇？有人说女人心海底针，某种程度我认同这样的论点。人类的行为本来就是个错综复杂的系统，充满了各种未知的变数。但是这并不代表人类的行为是完全随机的。事实上，人类的行为很多时候是有规律可循的。那么究竟是什么原因驱使女人选择外遇呢？其实在学术界已经长期在研究这个主题。
So it's a risky thing. Why do women do it?
Evolution always has to be part of the answer.
Women tend to go for the bad boy traits. They tend to go for more masculine faces, more masculine bodies, and even more dominant behavior.
So even anything.
而在演化心理学这个理论，就有两个主要的理论对女人的外遇的行为做出了解释。这两个理论各自都有自己的支持者，彼此也常年争辩不休。在这个影片，我就要来带你看看这两个理论的起源，他们之间的冲突，以及到底他们是如何解释女人外遇的原因。首先我们要问的是，为什么我们要从演化心理学的角度来理解女人外遇的原因？这门学科背后的基本假设是什么？其实演化心理学的起源是来自于达尔文的性择理论，这是一个关于生物为了繁衍而进行的交配竞争，以及这个过程中所产生的择偶策略如何被传递给后代的理论。但在这边不要把我们所熟知的物竞天择适者生存混为一谈。物竞天择关注的是生存，但是性择理论是聚焦于择偶优势。看看孔雀的华丽羽毛，或是公鹿巨大的鹿角，而母鹿却没有巨大鹿角的差异情形。我们可以理解这些特征并不是为了生存，而是为了吸引伴侣。所以从演化心理学的角度来看，你之所以存在于这个世界，是因为你的祖先在择偶策略上面做对了什么东西。而那些没有择偶选择权、没有后代的人，他们失败的择偶策略自然也不会流传下来。那么女人外遇的行为又是如何在这样的框架下被解释的？我们先从一个非常具有争议性的理论——两面择偶策略开始讲起。
And there have been 4 or 5 leading hypotheses about why women do it. The reason that women do it is that they're pursuing a dual mating strategy.
所以女人外遇的原因究竟是什么？从演化心理学的角度来看，女人和男人外遇的根本原因是不同的。一般来说，男人外遇的主要原因是在寻求性爱多样化的生物本能有关。在外遇的男人中，有 70% 单纯是因为脑冲想到处打炮，只要机会摆在眼前，并且评估所需要付出的成本和风险够低的话，那么男人就上了。然而女人相较于男人外遇的原因，本质上就不一样了，并且复杂许多。演化心理学对于探究女人外遇原因的第一个主要理论叫做 dual mating strategies， 意思是女人一方面会寻找具有资源，并且愿意把这些资源投资在她身上的伴侣，而另一方面又同时寻找具有良好基因的男人。这个理论的主要支持者之一是演化心理学家 Marty Haselton， 他在他的著作 Hormonal 里面针对 dual mating strategies 进行更深入的探讨。他不只认为女人偏好这两面性，他认为女人在不同的时间与情境会对这两面性的偏好有所增减，择偶行为也会有所改变。而这个理论叫做排卵转移。
So there's one provocative study that I'll tell you about that demonstrates the general principle, which is that men's behaviors change depending on where women are in their cycle. It was a study of lap dancers.
Okay.
And when lap dancers were near ovulation, they made $100 more per shift than at other phases of their cycle. Now, that doesn't tell us anything. This is the key question, and this is what actually research in my laboratory has sought to address. What is it about women that's changing that could cause a change in men? So why are men responding differently?
Yeah.
We find that women are more flirtatious when they're fertile. Their voices raise in pitch, so they become more feminine and therefore more attractive. Their body odors are even more attractive.
然后这边有个细微的重点必须要注意，因为这个现象并不存在于没有处于长期关系，或者是处于一段满意的长期关系的女性里面。所以以这个理论来说，女人会外遇在于其择偶策略的两面性，并且若这女的处在一段不满意的长期关系时，她的择偶偏好和行为会跟随着自己排卵周期而有所改变。在排卵前高生育期的时候，倾向找良好基因、有性吸引力的男人；而在低生育期的时候，则会倾向拥有资源较多且提供舒适与供养的男人。 两面择偶策略与排卵转移的理论出现在学术界时，引起非常多的争议。Marty Haselton 当然也被许多极左人士给出征。有趣的是 ，Marty Haselton 本身其实是个女权人士，然而反对两面择偶策略的人也不完全是拥抱心灵白板论的左派人士。因为连演化心理学宗师级的人物，也就是 Marty Haselton 做研究时的指导教授 David Buss 也开始质疑这个理论。
And I started to doubt it for two reasons. One is some replications, some larger scale replications of the work started to fail to replicate. When women have affairs, 70+% tend to fall in love with or become attached to their affair partner. In contrast to men, where it's more like 30% of men who have affairs fall in love with or become attached to their affair partner. So, but from a design perspective, an engineering perspective, that's a disastrous thing if you're just trying to get good genes. So you're trying to retain the investment of one guy while getting good genes surreptitiously from this, guy who presumably has more. Falling in love with them and becoming attached, that's not a feature you want.
Yeah, it's bad engineering.
也因为如此 ，David Buss 转而支持另外一个理论，而这个理论叫做伴侣转换假说。
And so I developed an alternative hypothesis that I call the mate switching hypothesis, which is that affairs are one way in which women divest themselves of a cost-inflicting partner or a partner who things aren't working out well with, and it's a way to either transition back into the mating market or to trade up in the mating market.
Women who have affairs cite that they're unhappy with their primary relationship, emotionally unhappy, or sexually unhappy, and typically both. And this may seem like totally obvious that, well, of course, people, if they're unhappy in the relationship, are more likely to stray, but in fact, it's not true for men. So if you compare men who are happy with their marriage and men who are not happy with their marriage, there's no difference in their infidelity rates.
而这两个理论的辩论也不只是在学术界而已。比如说，西方红药丸教父 Rollo Tomassi， 他就是两面择偶策略的拥护者。Rollo Tomassi 就曾经和一位左派战神 Destiny 进行过公开辩论。不对，事实上是 Rollo Tomassi 和他的朋友 Michael Satan。Michael Satan 也是个有趣的人物，他经常会和 Rollo Tomassi 在同个节目上出现，理所当然，他当然是站在红药丸的阵营这边。Michael Satan 本身也是个演化心理学的爱好者。并且他是个彻头彻尾 David Buss 的铁粉，当然他也是个伴侣转换假说的支持者。
Do you believe in a mate switching strategy?
No.
You don't believe in a mate
I think
switching
that
strategy?
when I looked up data for what were the most reproductively advantageous ways to conduct oneself throughout all of human history, humans seem to practice something called serial monogamy. So we date, we break up, we date, we break up.
That's what I described. Yeah.
And that is, not only is that what we tend to practice, that is the most successful reproductive strategy.
Yeah. But that's a mate switching strategy.
But it's not like you dump somebody immediately just to like upgrade, because that, I don't think there's any evidence for that.
There are still studies that show that women act differently when they are narcissists.
There are studies that show that women have different preferences sometimes when
and they
are
also
on different parts. Yes, but it's whether or not they act on those. And this is the importance of measuring extra partner pairings, is that you can ask a woman, do you think that certain men are more attractive at different parts of your period, or at different parts of your ovarian cycle, or your cycle basically? And women will say yes, but they don't actually act on it.
So you're just saying that these are preferences, but they don't act on it. Because there's a study, again, at the end of Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters by Satoshi Kanazawa and David Allen, where they talk about women actually retain more sperm from men that they cheat with than men that they don't cheat with. And that was part of the reason why the dual mating strategy came about, was because of those studies.
And there's also some. I'm a big fan of Dr. Marty Haselton. I've been using her work since the very earliest days. Also a student of Dr. David Buss. Okay. As far as the dual mating strategy is concerned, that's the microbiological side of alpha fucks and beta bucks. The most important one is this: is that in those studies, when Dr. Marty Hazelton was going through this. The women who stated that they were in a satisfying relationship, they wanted to fuck more, but they wanted to fuck the guy that they were with at that time.
Again, remember.
So and I agree with this, but again, fuck the guy they were with. That's not alpha fucks beta bucks. That's just being with their partner.
But hold on, what if the guy who was the provider and the lover were the same guy? What if it was Brad Pitt?
And I think that's the issue that researchers have started to converge on. So Gangstad was one of the original proponents of this theory, and in June of last year, he did a huge literature review on why we haven't seen any studies replicating this dual mating hypothesis. The reproductive strategy just doesn't make sense because one, the men wouldn't practice that reproductive strategy because it doesn't make sense.
I agree with you. He's the one who believes in dual mating strategy. I believe in mate switching hypothesis.
So
the thing is where I go to the difference is women are cheating. Number one, there are some women cheating, and when they cheat, they are doing so because they're in an unhappy relationship. So let's bring this all back around to Dunbar's number and social media. More women are in unhappy relationships because they are comparing themselves to other people, other relationships, and they have access to more men, which is causing more unhappy relationships, which is causing more cheating.
You guys have a big disagreement there.
It's not a big disagreement.
It's a huge disagreement because the question is, what is the mating strategy? Because you're saying women are always fucking to find long-term partners, which I agree with.
Yeah. But here's the thing. The reason why I don't completely disagree is because I used to live in Los Angeles and I live in Las Vegas, and there's tons of women who are straight up cucking their boyfriends, and I meet hundreds of them. And what you're going to say is, well, yeah, I mean, that's selection bias.
Well, what I'm going to say is, in the beginning of the debate, I agree that we're not going to do stories. We're just going to go on the research, right?
Yeah, stick with the research. Sure. What I'm saying is, but there's enough for me to say it's statistically viable that women are still doing what he's saying. It's just not all women.
然而 dual mating strategies 的拥护者其实并没有完全消失。Marty Hazelton 在针对质疑 dual mating strategies 的论文有提出反击的论述。在2023年的当下，这两个理论其实还是持续彼此有所争论，还没有一个定论。这个影片我希望带给大家从学术界如何看待两性择偶的问题，并且让那些对红药丸有兴趣的人，或者是已经有点红药丸中毒的人，可以用个更客观的态度来看待演化心理学如何解释两性择偶的问题。那么这两个理论我到底是偏向哪个理论呢？其实这整个过程我看下来，我并不认为这两个理论是完全互斥的，因为对我来说，我是以自我提升的角度来看待这件事情。我真正在乎的是我的自我提升的策略是否可以更加贴近真实。Mate switching hypothesis 告诉我们，真正可以预测女人外遇的原因，在于她是否处在一个满意的长期关系跟性生活里。而 dual mating strategies 告诉我们，真正稳健的价值其实包含了短期的价值，包含性吸引力、良好的基因等等，以及长期价值，就是你如何可以掌握你的资源，以及你是否可以把你的资源投资在你的伴侣身上，供养以及保护。你可以说有些高标准的女人，在她们没有同时满足 dual mating strategies 的短长期价值，他们就会觉得自己处在一个不满意的长期关系里面，而触发了 mate switching hypothesis。所以对我来说，我没有必要否定其中一个理论，而选择另外一个理论，因为对我来说，这两个理论是可以融合的。我们没有办法完全预测掌控一个人的行为，我们真正能够掌控的是自己。所以我们可以尽可能的学习，去理解这个世界到底是怎么运作的。在有足够的资讯之后，我们把自己的需求摆在最高位，并且下出真正适合自己的人生决策，然后一步步的往自己设定的目标迈进。这才是这个影片真正要带给你的讯息。好了，如果你喜欢这个影片的话，我相信你也会喜欢这一个影片，因为在这个影片我聊了和演化心理学完全互斥的理论 The Blank Slate。那么我们就下个影片见啦，拜拜。